Hi, I'm Bernard Starr with an update on the battle to defeat climate change. Today's presentation is an audio-video version of my recently published article in Op-Ed News titled "The Commodity Curse in the Age of Energy Transition: Which Economies Will Crash, Survive, or Thrive?" At some point, renewable energy and other emerging technologies will replace fossil fuels, hopefully sooner rather than later. When that transition accelerates, nations whose economies depend primarily on the production and export of fossil fuels could face severe economic consequences from what economists call the commodity curse. My article examines which countries are most vulnerable, which are best positioned to adapt, and what actions governments can take now to reduce the economic and social impact of this transition. It also explores how innovation, diversification, education, and investment in new technologies may determine which economies survive and which thrive in the post-fossil fuel era. Let's begin. The commodity curse in the age of energy transition: which economies will crash, survive, or thrive? It happened to Spain in the 17th century, and it's poised to happen again to nations whose economies rely almost entirely on fossil fuel production and exports. This phenomenon, often called the commodity curse, creates short-term wealth while setting the stage for long-term economic vulnerability, even economic collapse, by discouraging innovation and diversification. Countries most exposed, where oil and gas make up more than 90% of exports, include Algeria, Azerbaijan, Brunei Darussalam, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Sudan, and Venezuela. And the immense current value of the vast fossil fuel reserves masks a more serious threat. Global oil reserves are estimated at roughly 1.7 trillion barrels. Even at moderate prices, whether $100 per barrel or closer to today's lower forecasts for the future, the implied losses will be staggering when the commodity curse strikes. Adding to their dilemma, many nations enriched by fossil fuels have had little incentive to develop other industries. Their wealth has enabled them to import and consume 21st century technologies, but not to create or innovate them. As a result, their economic futures remain tied to a single declining resource. History offers a stark, cautionary lesson. Spain, after conquering vast territories in the New World, extracted enormous quantities of gold, silver, and other resources. For a time, this wealth made Spain the dominant global power. But reliance on plundered resources discouraged domestic industries and stifled innovation. By the late 17th century, as commodities from the Americas dwindled, competition from other European powers intensified, and piracy flourished, Spain's economy fell into deep recession. Its global dominance ended. Wealth built primarily on a single commodity, gold, proved unsustainable. A similar fate looms over fossil fuel-dependent nations that fail to diversify as the global energy transition accelerates. The consequences could be especially severe in parts of the Arab world. Civilizations that once stood at the forefront of science, mathematics, and medicine from the 8th to the 13th centuries now risk falling further behind. The tragedy is not a lack of talent or intellectual capacity, but a failure to fully cultivate and mobilize the creative potential of their populations to diversify their economies and compete in a rapidly changing world. The solution is clear. Nations vulnerable to the commodity curse must pivot toward education, innovation, and economic diversification. Instead of relying primarily on fossil fuels, they should invest in research, entrepreneurship, and technological development rooted in their own human capital and cultural strengths. Reviving intellectual and economic leadership is possible, but only through sustained and deliberate commitment to innovation. Ironically, at the very moment when warnings about the commodity curse are growing louder, many countries are moving in the opposite direction. The drill baby drill mentality, sometimes explicit, sometimes quiet, continues to shape energy policies. Major fossil fuel producers routinely fail to meet emissions reduction commitments while expanding production and use. Short-term economic gains continue to outweigh long-term strategic thinking. Meanwhile, global attention remains focused on China, the world's largest polluter. Yet much of the criticism aimed at China overlooks a critical reality that may be blindsiding critics. China is not only exploiting fossil fuels, including coal, but is also investing heavily in the future of energy, particularly nuclear fusion. China's massive investment in nuclear fusion, the holy grail of clean energy, could reshape global power dynamics. Nuclear fusion has the potential to produce virtually unlimited clean energy with minimal radioactive waste and far lower risk of catastrophic accidents than nuclear fission power. Not only is China investing far more than the U.S., its centralized, strategically coordinated approach also allows for faster decision-making and concentrated resource allocation. At the same time, there are growing concerns that China is attracting scientific talent from the United States and other Western nations. Neutron Bytes has reported key fusion scientists, discouraged by the U.S. lack of government support, are voting with their feet to other nations, including China, end quote. And the MIT Technology Review recently noted, quote, China's robust industrial base could allow an emerging fusion energy sector to climb the learning curve much faster and more effectively than its global competitors, end quote. History again provides a revealing comparison. In 1942, determined to meet Germany and Japan to nuclear fission, the United States launched the Manhattan Project, mobilizing vast financial resources, scientific talent, and political will. In just 3 years, 1942 to 1945, what once seemed impossible became reality. Today, with far greater knowledge of nuclear science, extraordinary technological tools, including artificial intelligence, and a global pool of scientific talent, it should make achieving nuclear fusion an attainable goal, and sooner than doubts of naysaying skeptics. If China is first to achieve scalable commercial functionality of fusion technology, it would not only accelerate the end of the fossil fuel era, it would place China in a dominant position as the global energy leader. Nations that cling to fossil fuel dependency or skimp on investment in nuclear fusion may find themselves economically and strategically dependent on the one who moved first and fastest. The scramble to catch up would be costly, slow, and geopolitically disruptive. There is still time for Western nations and other industrial economies to act. A coordinated, large-scale investment in nuclear fusion, comparable or greater in ambition than China's effort, could not only prevent energy dependence, but also ensure a more competitive global energy future. The race is not yet over, but the window for leadership is narrowing. The question is no longer whether the commodity curse will strike fossil fuel-dependent economies. The real question is which nations will recognize the danger in time to adapt and which will wait until it's too late as the commodity curse reshapes the global balance of power. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Bernard Starr.